Hello everyone, this is James from Tin Robot Games, and this is the Making a Game web series, where you get to follow along as we make a game. In this case, we're reskinning a classic card game that's been in my family for over 100 years. In today's episode, we're going to cover off artwork and some of the things to look out for as I review some of the artwork that came back from the artist that I hired.
Resistance to fun is futile.
So let's get to it. One of the first things I want to cover off in this video is the size of the image you ask for from your artist. So when you're requesting artwork to be done, and whether it's through Fiverr or one of the other methods that we talked about in the last video, you want to make sure you're getting a fairly large image back from your artist. So in my case, although I'm doing a small playing card, which is about 2 by 3 inches in size, I want the option that at some point, if I want to blow this up into a poster, or if I'm doing some kind of a promotion to support this game, I have a resolution that's large enough that I can blow that image up. So one thing I asked for from my particular illustrator was to have these done at an 8 by 10 size at 300 DPI. That was enough resolution to allow me, A, to do any edits that I needed to do, and I'm going to go through some of them here today. Secondly, if I want to do a poster, I have more than enough resolution to do so. Now, I am excited. I've got my artwork back from my illustrator. I think she did a fantastic job. Now, one thing I really want to say about this artist is the level of detail that she put into her illustrations was phenomenal. When you zoom up on Sir Robert Dudley, for instance, and you look at his face and zoom in further right to his eye, you can actually see a reflection in his eye. You can see the individual eyelashes in this image. So I know that when I make a poster, these posters are going to look sharp, crisp, and they're going to look fantastic. And I really appreciated the amount of detail that this artist put into this work. Now, she had committed to do it in 3 weeks. Unfortunately, it took 3 months. Now, in most cases, you would probably want to cut bait with an illustrator like this, taking this long, but I was lucky that when I had sent some of the specifications to her of the types of illustrations I was looking for, we got a couple sample images back, and I was really happy with the quality of work. So for me, I thought, you know what, this is worth the wait. I wasn't in an incredible hurry. I definitely want to make sure I got the artwork right on this one. So in some cases, it might take a lot longer than you expect. In fact, in most cases, it probably will. Now, one thing I would recommend when you're doing illustration sourcing of your own is you want to make sure that they send you at least one image. So I had 15 in my series. So that's a large commitment. So one thing that I agreed to with this artist is I said, look, I'm going to give you the full job, but that's all predicated on me approving the very first image coming back. Watermark it if you want, but I need to see your cut of the first image to make sure we're on the same page in the direction that you're going before we continue. In this case, she definitely was. I got Queen Elizabeth back first. I liked the direction she was going. And then the different pieces came in over the following weeks. There's a little bit of a hiatus in there where she went dark for about 4 weeks, but finally I got all the artwork back and I love it. So in today's episode, I'm actually going to go through the artwork I received. At this point, I knew that it would probably take another 3 months if I needed the types of edits I wanted to make. Thankfully, I'm proficient enough at Photoshop that I knew I'd be able to make these changes myself. And that's what I'm going to go through today on screen right here. So I'm going to take you through each of the images and the types of changes that I wanted to make. So first, I'm going to start off with the first 3 characters. We have James Hepburn on the left. In the middle, we have Henry Stuart, who was Mary Queen of Scots' second husband and the father of the future King of England and Scotland. And then we got Sir Robert Dudley on the far right. So starting off with James Hepburn, one of the things that I really didn't like about this image when it came back was the fact that he's wearing a green shirt. And all of the paintings that I sent to the artist to base this on were all with more of a gold coloring or a yellow coloring in those shirts. So what I've done is I've actually gone, and with just Photoshop, I've retoned and readjusted the color spectrum on that to make the color pop as more of a yellow hue. While I was at it, in around the face, I kind of widened his eyes a bit, widened his face a little bit, just to make him closer to resemble a little bit more to some of the source paintings that we had from the beginning. Secondly, we've got Henry Stuart. The one thing that kind of bugged me about this image was his head was cranked on this weird angle to the side. His face, all the source imagery again, his mouth was a lot smaller in all the images I saw. His eyes were a lot closer together. His nose took up a little bit more of his face. So I've adjusted all those features on his face. Likewise, I have made his ears less beet red. So in these images, he had these really beet red ears like he was embarrassed. I wanted just to make those a little bit lighter, more skin color to go with the image. But I think where it ended up looks fantastic. Then going on to Robert Dudley. Very little changes here. The one thing I made was his beard. All the source images, he had a beard that came down kind of over his clothes. So I made sure I extended that. Also, in his face, he had kind of this very samurai look to his face. So I tried just to kind of round out his face a little bit to make him look a little less samurai and more resemble the photographs that this was sourced from. The next 3 images I'm going to go through are David Rizzio, John Knox, Sir Nicholas Throckmorton. So for here again, David Rizzio, I didn't like the angle of the head, so I've just straightened the head out a little bit. Other than that, no other real big changes to him. I did notice when you zoom up on some of these images, part of the style is there's these scratches through the canvas and through the face in some cases. So if there were scratches that I found kind of impeded the actual artwork, I removed those scratches as well. One thing you'll also notice with all these is I've added this little nickel. So you see this little 5 points in the top right hand corner. I put the value of each of the cards in the top right hand corner so that when you're playing the game, it's very easy for you to keep score. Next, we've got John Knox. This image you can see I flipped it because I have this point system in the top right hand corner. His hand was in the way. I didn't want to cover up his hand, so I put the coin on the right side and flipped the image. And then lastly, for Sir Nicholas Throckmorton, other than lightening up his face a little bit, I thought the image was great and I left it as is. For the next image, I'm going to go through the wild card, which is the Crown Jewels, the Little Skye Terrier, as well as William Cecil. Starting off with the Crown Jewels, the one thing I had actually asked, I was surprised it didn't come through this way, was I wanted the background to be purple. And the reason being is that purple's always been a color of royalty. If you even go back to when Caesar started getting into a lot of trouble in the Roman days, he started wearing purple, which is a color of kings and queens, and that's when some of the uprising started, where other senators looked at him and said, whoa, this guy's starting to wear the colors of royalty now as he's starting to see himself as a king. So definitely wanted to have purple as a background, so I had to recolor this one. You'll notice too that the crown, through my research, I wanted to make sure the crown mimicked the crown that would have happened before all the crown jewels were melted down. So the sword, the oil, the orb, those are all from the original set, but the crown has been replaced in the modern day crown jewels. They're recreated. The original crown would have looked more like this as in the picture. And as you can see, I've changed the value to 20 points. The dog is fantastic. I left him as he is. And then Sir William Cecil again, thought he was fantastic, left him the way he was. The next group of images I have are the Executioner, Fotheringhay Castle, and Loch Leven. So starting off with the Executioner, I flipped the image again to accommodate the point system. I've lightened up the image. It was a bit dark. The chopping block, the artist had made it stone, where historically it would have been made of wood, so I wanted to recolor that as wood. The floor looked a little too much like stone below the feet of the Executioner. Plus, to me, it didn't look like they were up on a platform enough. So I've created this wooden floor that I've put in underneath that kind of looks like this makeshift floor that's been built. For the Fotheringhay Castle, again, lightened it up, flipped it so I could put the point system in the top right-hand corner. And then with Loch Leven, the one thing I didn't really like about Loch Leven was how green everything was toned. So I didn't mind the green sky because I think you need a different color than Fotheringhay Castle so you can tell the castles apart. But I thought the stonework being very green looked almost too mossy-like. So I've retoned that to be more brown hues. Last but not least, we have the royal family. So this, I got so excited. These are some of the first images I saw that came back, and I was just absolutely beside myself. I thought she did a fantastic job. But starting off with Mary Queen of Scots, one thing I didn't like was the fact that these little kind of random ringlets that were hanging down in front of her face. Definitely a royal person would never have loose hairs hanging out. They would have been very tightly pinned back and so forth. So I had those removed. Also recolored the hair to be red because she had red hair, and moved the part ever so slightly and just lightened up the image. Also, I found that the direction of the arms were a little odd. They were both kind of going in the same direction. So what I did is I took the one arm and I just repivoted it so that it would look like her hands are more on her lap. For Queen Elizabeth, This one here, although I instructed, I wanted to have that classic kind of double bun shape in her hair. Again, I didn't want to send this back because she did such a great work on the artwork. So I just did the changes myself on this end. So I got more of that classic shape of her hair. For her face, I whitened up her face significantly. She actually survived the pox, and that could pretty significantly scarred her face. So she started this whole trend of like cake white makeup on her face to cover that up. And you actually see that in a lot of the later portraits in her life. So I've wanted to replicate that as well. So I've lightened up her face. Lastly is James. At the time he was 16. Like the portrait, he looks a little bit jaundiced in this image. So what I decided to do was just have it recolored his face so it was more skin flesh tones. But other than that, I think it looks great. We have the royal family now that fits really well together. Each of the queens is worth 100 points. When you pair them up in this particular game, you're going to pair them with the king or pair them with each other. So this whole set goes together, and I couldn't be more happy where the artwork turned out. Okay, so that is the artwork. Some of the learnings from finding an artist. Key things you want to look out for: resolution, 8x10, 300 DPI is a great target for your illustrator. Start off asking them for one image to make sure you're both on the same page with the style before you go and do the entire series. That'll save you a lot of headache. And then lastly, you want to make sure that there's some header space in around the image so that when you go to import this into a card or whatever your medium is, that you've got that bleed. You've got the image can go over top of the cut lines and you're not going to be left with a space around the edge. So guys, what do you think? Did you find anything helpful in there? Maybe you just like watching the different changes that I've made to these images. Either way, if you give me a like down below, a subscription down below, hit the bell icon, you'll be notified when future episodes come out. Once again, this is James from Tin Robot Games.
Resistance to fun is futile.